Would you like to learn how to create $3,500 a month in passive income? Well, my next guest did that with a laundromat. In fact, he owns multiple laundromats. And no, it's not the most glamorous business model, but if you can find the right area, a laundromat can actually be quite lucrative. In this episode, we talk about some of the mistakes to avoid, and yeah, my guest has made a lot of them. We also talk about what to look for, how much you can expect to put down from a down payment standpoint, and what kind of revenue you can generate. And believe it or not, $3,500 is actually on the low end of this spectrum. So if you're looking for passive income, a laundromat might be your option. All right, let's get into it. This is a good one. Please welcome Jordan Berry. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, you know what? Thank you for having me. Super duper excited to be here right now.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks for taking the time. So why don't you kick us off and tell us about your background?
Yeah. So just to kind of, give everybody the context, big picture, I'm in the laundromat space right now. And like most young children, I dreamt of growing up and owning laundromats. I'm sure many people can relate to that. No, just kidding. So I'm married. I've got 2 kids. My son's 12. My daughter's about to turn 10, even though I forbade her from going to double digits. She is insistent that she's going to turn 10 anyways. And live in Southern California here. I started off my, adult life as a pastor. Actually, I was a youth pastor and a pastor for almost 15 years. And again, very natural transition. I went from being a pastor to a laundromat owner, naturally as things go. But actually, it's one of those things where you just kind of like look around and you're like, how did I end up here? Where did life take me? I'm owning laundromats now. It's so weird. But yeah, got to a point, after being a pastor for a lot of time where I had young kids and my wife was staying at home, and, it was just a good natural time to sort of transition out of vocational ministry, and was trying to figure out what to do with life. And the idea that I had, which I thought was genius, was, we had a house here in Southern California, and I was like, well, let's take the money we got in the bank. Let's, go buy a condo in Hawaii on the beach somewhere and rent out our house here in Southern California. And if we ever decide we want to come back to California, we can do that and rent out our condo in Hawaii, net gain, condo in Hawaii. And my wife was like, we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so we bought a laundromat. So life has been like turns left and right. And here I am right now on your podcast talking about laundromats.
All right. So when did you buy your first laundromat?
Yeah. So that transition happened almost a decade ago. Bought that first laundromat, and the idea behind buying it was, hey, laundromats are, this business that, throw off pretty good cash flow and don't require a whole lot of time. And that was the idea. That is not, however, how it worked out for me. We can dig into that here a little bit, but that was sort of the idea behind it. Yeah.
So let's back up a second here. You arrived at a laundromat. What did you read, or or did you talk to somebody, or what turned you on to that business model?
Yeah. So basically a family friend was working a, tech job in San Francisco Bay Area, working 70, 80 hours a week, but making good money. And he ended up buying a laundromat and replacing his income from his tech job and working like 5 hours a week. And my wife heard about that and was like, that sounds pretty awesome. Let's do that. And I was like, that does sound pretty awesome. Okay, we can do that. And then we can buy our condo in Hawaii. I don't, spoiler alert, own a condo in Hawaii, nor have I ever up to this point yet. Still on the to-do list, I guess.
Okay. Maybe.
Yeah, family friend introduced us to the idea of it.
Okay. So walk us through, how did you get into this? I assume it's similar to buying a home. You have to put a certain percentage down. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we went about the business of, well, I did mostly went about the business of trying to research as much as I could. Now, 9, 10 years ago, there really wasn't a whole lot of information out there on laundromats, on how to buy them, how to run them. There wasn't really anything online, and there aren't really too many books on it. So I did as much research as I could. I talked to the family friend, but he happened to just buy a really good laundromat the first time around. And so he didn't really have to learn a lot of the lessons that I was about to learn, at least the way that I learned them. And so it was helpful, but didn't really know some of the pitfalls that were laying in front of us. But we ended up finding, I did what pretty much we all do when we're getting ready to jump into something is I Googled laundromats for sale near me, or maybe even Yahoo'd at the time. I'm not sure where on the timeline it was, but at one point I was Yahooing things. But Googled laundromat for sale near me, was looking at laundromats, found one I thought was interesting, connected with the broker. The broker was like, actually, this one, it's got some issues going on right now, but I have this other one that you might be interested in. And that one was the one that we ended up buying, and we ended up paying all cash for it. It's what we call in the business a zombie mat, which means a big time fixer upper. So we ended up buying it, I want to say for $60,000, 65, 70, somewhere in there. $1,000. And then we financed a bunch of new equipment for 100% financing, which is great. But for somewhere around $150,000 of equipment into that laundromat.
So we're looking at 165 plus the 150. Bring us what, 215?
Yeah, 65 ish. Yeah, in the 150. Yeah.
Okay, so 215 all in. And what percent down?
We just bought it all cash. That one. Yeah. So 100% down. Well, except for the equipment. 100% down in the acquisition. And then we financed the equipment 100% down.
Got it. Okay. So you had 65 in the bank, and then you finance the 150 from your, I assume you went to your local bank and just open up a business bank account.
So, I mean, we did do all that, but so equipment financing, there's, the manufacturers, actually have financing for us. That's how you can get 100% financing a lot of times through the manufacturers. So that's the way that we went about it, but you also can get loans from the bank for that stuff too.
Gotcha. Okay. What do you typically need to do? Like, what is best practice with a laundromat? It sounds like, you want to, I'm thinking of the 20% rule when you're buying a home here in the States. And the audience knows this. Sometimes I'll speak to like, hey, we've got a US example here, but we do have a lot of listeners outside the States. So here in the States, of course, you want to put 20% down. Otherwise you have to have PMI, private mortgage insurance. But in your case, is that kind of the similar rule, 20% down?
Listen, right now is kind of a weird time when it comes to lending, right? Interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
And lenders are getting a little more conservative on the business, commercial real estate front. So what I've been seeing lately is closer to actually 40% down is what lenders are looking for a laundromat. If you're going to go the traditional financing route. So that's closer to what I'm seeing. But there are also SBA options if the laundromat can qualify for those, that where you have to put less down for sure, down to 10 or 15%, I think.
Gotcha.
Get to.
Okay. All right. And then let's break down the numbers here. My audience loves the numbers. You looking at this laundromat. How many machines were you looking at? Or did you start with like the same amount you have today, or were you able to scale up by adding more space to this laundromat? Maybe break this down a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, laundromats can be difficult to scale up in terms of number of machines. Because obviously they're very heavy on the infrastructure side. So you got to have a lot of plumbing, a lot of electrical. And if it's not there, then you have to add that, which obviously adds some cost, but also you got to have the space to be able to do that. And then also there's something called an impact fee, which, listen, there's a lot of ridiculous government fees out there, but an impact fee has got to be near the top of one of the most ridiculous fees, because basically what it is yeah, basically what it is like a thumbs up, like, okay, we're going to allow you to connect to the sewer. It's not like a permit to do that. It's essentially just permission to do that. And those fees can get really high, and they usually charge per machine that you add. So if you're building out a space that doesn't have that infrastructure already, you're going to pay for every washing machine.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're adding machines, you're going to pay for those extra washing machines to do that. So I didn't add, just to answer your question, I guess in a really long way, I didn't add any machines. We just replaced existing machines. I think there were
how many
are I think there's 32 washers and 28 dryers at that laundromat. And I think 38 washers, 32 washers, 28 dryers. Yeah.
And when you shop for a laundromat, I'm assuming you jump right to the revenue per machine to kind of figure out, hey, what is this laundromat overall doing in comparison to another laundromat that could be, I don't know, a mile or two away? I know you're in LA, so population density and infrastructure density is a lot more than where I'm located, is like suburbs of Milwaukee. We're talking Pewaukee. Most people won't know where that is. And it's like you'll have a laundromat every 5 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally what we're looking at is net income overall per month in terms of evaluating the laundromat. So, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of different sizes of machines, and different brands use different sizes. So one brand might have 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 80-pound machines. Another brand might have 20s, 30s, 50s, 70s, 90s. So it's hard to compare per machine. Okay. And obviously they're all going to be at different price points and different profit margins also. So really what we're looking at is net income per month, and then obviously net income per year. Yeah. But that's the general way of how we're evaluating it. And then that net income becomes sort of the foundation of the valuation of the laundromat also.
Right. Do they do this with we talking like 3x, 4x, 5x on net income?
Yeah. So the industry average has been for a really long time, like 3.5 to 5 times net income, annual net income. But lately, over the last maybe 18 months, I am definitely seeing a shift up a little bit as demand has grown and supply is pretty limited. It's more limited than I've ever seen it before in the industry. And so we're seeing more like 4 to 5.5 times net income.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's multiple to acquire. You find out from whoever owns it, or if there's a broker, you find out what the net income is, multiply it by, you can expect by 4x, 5x. That's what you're going to pay for it.
Yeah. And here's what's so great about laundromats, right? And I just kind of put this in a context. So I have real estate. I love real estate investing. I have residential and commercial real estate, a little bit, not a huge portfolio, but a little bit, Mm-hmm. And for laundromats, the average real estate deal can't touch the average laundromat deal when it comes to cash flow, right? So, for example, at a 4x multiple, you're expecting a 25% return on your money in terms of cash flow, and at a 5x, you're at 20%. That's what I would say is a base hit deal. That's not a home run. That's a base hit deal, and that's without using leverage, right? So if you appropriately use a loan, that 20 to 25% can grow pretty quick, and the return on your investment can grow pretty quick there. And so that's why I always, when I'm talking to people who are interested in leaving your 9 to 5 or, achieving financial freedom, like if those are your main goals, I actually think real estate is not the best route to go if your goal is to do that as quickly as possible. I think a business like a laundromat, doesn't have to be a laundromat, but a business like a laundromat actually is going to get you there a lot quicker. And then you can turn around. You've got that cash flow that gives you that freedom to then go and invest in real estate, build that generational wealth, capture the equity that can be great in real estate.
Yeah.
And I actually think that way is actually a quicker way to go if your goal is that financial freedom or leaving your 9-to-5 job.
Laundromat over real estate
For the cash flow, and initially, yeah. But I'm like I said, I'm a real estate investor. Probably I love real estate even more than laundromats. But in terms of cash flow, I don't know. I got super onto the like financial freedom through real estate investing, and then I started doing the math, and I'm like, if I'm at like $200 of cash flow per door,
yeah,
how many doors do I have to have? Like that's a lot of doors. That's intimidating. But but like 99% of America could replace their income with 1 to 3 laundromats. You know what I mean? Base hit deals.
We're going to break down the numbers here in a second, but I was just going that direction because we'll use my area, which is going to be different than where you're at in LA, or even, you said you've got a buddy up there in San Francisco. I mean, that's expensive as you get. But let's say you use a $250,000 home here in the Midwest, we'll say Milwaukee area. And just talking to other friends that have owned real estate, they'll charge like rent that'll be, let's say $1,500, but after you pay your expenses, you pay your mortgage, you pay your property management company, which is taking on average between 8 and 15%, your net profit on, revenue you're making on a renter is $1,500. You might pocket, let's say $500 to $700 at best. And then the question is, I got to own like multi-million dollars worth of property to replace my income, and that can take 10 years or more. You can achieve financial independence, but you got to stick to it, and you got to take that money, reinvest it back into the property that you're making, and you're going to keep your day job. But with the laundromat, let's break this down a little bit. So you're all in about $215,000. What's your revenue on that single laundromat?
Well, what are you asking me here? Are you asking me what my revenue was on that laundromat, or what it should have been?
Let's talk about I like how you phrased that. Talk about what it was and what it should have been. That'd be great.
Okay. So I kind of alluded to this did not go well for us, right? And granted, my story is a story of, we'll call it ignorance, because it's just hard to swallow stupidity. But it's a fine line between ignorance and stupidity. So I made a lot of really bad mistakes. And part of the problem is like, there really wasn't any information out there. And so I really didn't know what I was doing. And a cardinal sin that I committed was I pretty much relied almost entirely on one of the 2 people who stood to gain for me buying this deal. It was the broker, right? Like the seller and the broker stood to gain for me buying the deal. I pretty much relied entirely on the broker, and it just turned out the broker did not have my best interest in mind. And so, the broker essentially was like, hey, look, this laundromat, we already know it's not making money. It's breaking even. It needs a lot of work. It's been neglected. We're going to put new equipment in there. Here's the pro forma of what it should do. And the pro forma, basically was like, hey, you should be making, I forget, like $5,000 or $6,000 a month net after a year. And I'm like, sweet, man, I'm in for 60. So if I make $5,000 a month, that's like a
payback time
on my investment. Like that's pretty good. Yeah. I'll take that all day long. Right. It just turned out that so he basically was like, we don't really need to do any due diligence. Like, it's not making money. We know that, right? Mm-hmm. It's breaking even. And it just turned out that it was losing thousands of dollars a month. It wasn't breaking even. But I didn't know that until I took over. And so again, just, lessons I learned they cost me a lot of money. We're talking 6 figures worth of lessons here by the end of this thing. But should have maybe been obvious. I don't know. So I was losing $1,000. So then I go and take out this loan for $150,000 for equipment, which, with the business model, the Field of Dreams business model, right? Like if you build it, they will come. Yeah. And, because the broker also was like, listen, nobody markets in laundromats. You don't have to do any marketing. Let's just fix it up. Everybody will show up. Well, they kind of did. So business doubled. I can't remember exact numbers, but to kind of give you a ballpark, I think we went from like $4,000 of gross income to about $8,000 of gross income.
Okay.
But we already had a chunk to make up for it because it was losing money every month. I want to say it costs, trying to give you good ballpark numbers, but it's been a while.
Thank you.
But I want to say my expenses at that initial point were like $6,500 a month.
Whoa.
And I was maybe at 4,000 of income, and it almost doubled to close to $8,000 a month. But now I'm also tacking on a loan payment to that number. So we were underwater. We went from thinking we were going to be making $5,000 a month to we were losing a couple grand a month for a couple years there.
Why were the costs so high? Let me phrase this differently. What should the cost have been, and why were they at 65?
I think the number is fairly reasonable. I think the rent was a little high. Rent is your lease is it's paramount in laundromats, because with laundromat you need a long-term lease, right? Because if the landlord's like, hey, we're not going to renew your lease, guess what? You're not going to move your laundromat most likely. So you're out of business. You've got no asset anymore. Or if the landlord's like, hey, we're going to double your rent because your lease is up, so your rent's doubling. Well, now you're in a tough situation because your cash flow is going to be lower, your net income is going to be lower, and then because of that, the value of your business is also going to be lower. So you're taking a double whammy hit. So you need a long lease, but if you get into a bad lease, obviously, it's going to affect your business. So the rent amount was probably pretty high, or probably too high for what I should have signed. So that was part of it, but really the laundromat should have been able to do enough business to cover that. And one of the big lessons that I found, so I put all this money into rehabbing the laundromat, right? Putting new equipment in, retooling it, all that stuff. I put $0 into rehabbing the reputation of the laundromat, and the laundromat was not good, right? It was in disarray, to put it lightly, but also like, okay, and I want to caveat this by saying this is not a typical experience for everybody. I don't want to scare anybody off, but the previous owner didn't go there very often. It had sort of become like gang turf. And so people were just literally afraid to go there, right? And like, who's doing laundry? It's like moms with little kids. Like, what mom with a little kid wants to go? And there's like drugs being sold and done in the back of the laundromat, people drinking, and you know what I mean? So it was just not a good situation that I was walking into. And I was just so naive. I had no idea about it. So it actually took a couple of years of just like staying on top of keeping the place clean, keeping the machines running, keeping the wrong people out while still making it welcoming for the right people. And I didn't do any marketing because so much money was going out. I turtled up, right? Like I was like, I can't put money into marketing because I don't know if it's going to work. And I just can't bear to like lose even more money than I'm already losing, right? I just got scared. I didn't know what to do. And I was like desperately searching for somebody to help me figure out what to do. And I just couldn't find anybody to help me figure out what to do. And so it was a hard situation. It just kind of took time for word to sort of get out organically because I wasn't doing anything to help it get out. So it took a couple years essentially to hit that break even point. Just a long road.
Yeah. This podcast episode is sponsored by Ticker. Ticker is a platform that helps you manage your own investments with confidence. Check this out. Let's search for Apple. You can see Apple is on sale. That's looking good. Score is 61 out of 100, and margin of safety is 75%. Higher the score, the safer the investment, and the higher the margin of safety, the higher potential returns you can make. In this case, you can see the share price is $175 as of the recording of this video, and the upside potential, the fair value, is $398. All right, let's look at a different stock. We'll go to GameStop. In this case, GameStop is overpriced. Scores 39 out of 100. That's not looking too good. And the margin of safety is 0%. Here's some other features within. You can create your own custom dashboard. I like to set up and take a look at the top gainers and losers in the last 24 hours. I also like to take a look at the top search stocks, but you can really customize the dashboard to whatever you want. We have stocks, ETFs, crypto. This is a big one. We have a watch list tool that allows you to add stocks to the watch list. And if anything changes, such as that score or margin of safety, you automatically get notified. I call it the set it and forget it feature. And then we have portfolio trackers and alerts. So if you're looking for strong stocks, want to avoid bad stocks, and learn how to invest, I invite you to join Ticker for free. So, because you teach people, we'll talk about that a little bit too, is you teach people how to, create their own passive income stream through a laundromat. Do you set expectations with people that, hey, you can, buy a laundromat and day one, you should be profitable? Or do you set expectations that it's probably going to take 3, 6, 9, 12 months?
Well, it depends on the laundromat that you buy, right? So if you're what I found out is, buying a fixer-upper laundromat can be a great opportunity if you do it correctly, because you can take a non-performing asset, turn it into a performing asset, and achieve higher returns potentially than if you just buy an already performing asset, right? But it's a riskier way to go. And if I had to do it over, I would have taken my $65,000 that I bought all cash, and I probably would have used leverage, and bought a higher caliber laundromat that was cash flowing day one. So, for a performing laundromat, you should be cash flowing day one. That's pretty much what you're buying when you're buying a laundromat. But if you're going to buy a fixer upper laundromat that's not cash flowing, then you got to go out and make it cash flow, and it's going to take some ramp up time essentially for that. So it depends on how you buy it.
Now, did I hear earlier you try to aim for about 4,000 net profit for a laundromat per month?
Well, essentially the broker told me that I should have been hitting 4, 5, 6,000 somewhere in there. But it really depends, right? And there's laundromats that do $2,000 to $5,000 a month, and there's laundromats that are doing $20,000 to $50,000 net a month. So
really,
anywhere sort of in between. And what I kind of recommend to people is especially if your goal is to leave your 9 to 5 or achieve financial freedom, you should have an idea of what that number is that you need. So if it's like $10,000 a month or whatever it is, right? Whatever your number is, well, then you can back into, okay, what size laundromat do you need? If you need like $100,000 a year, then, the laundromat's probably going to be somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000, right? And then you can sort of figure out, all right, well, how much capital do I need? Yeah. And, what ways can I finance it? All that stuff from there.
Let's talk about geography. Where are you finding, based on data, the best locations for a profitable laundromat?
Yeah. So, okay. Answer to this question is the answer to every question, which is it depends. So there's one of the things that's interesting about laundromats is there's different business models. I have a podcast where I interview laundromat owners, and almost all of them have some nuance to their business model that's different than everybody else, right? And it's such a simple business that you wouldn't expect that. But to put some big categories around it, so there's the self-serve model, right? What do you think of when a laundromat? People come to your place and they do their laundry. They use your machines. They pay you to do the work of their laundry, which is awesome, right? It's crazy. So that demographic that you're looking at is, generally speaking, a renter demographic. It's a demographic that's at or below, usually below median income there. And then obviously larger household sizes are better. Larger household sizes generally mean there's kids, families, and we all know kids are filthy, disgusting creatures. And so that means a lot of laundry. So which is good for a laundromat owner, right? So larger household sizes are better. And then, those are sort of some of the demographic things that you're looking at. But even just to shortcut that, if you're finding things in the area that are like fast food restaurants, dollar general Dollar Tree, whatever your dollar store is, wherever you live, right? Like
Nearby.
those, similar kinds of demographics are going to use the check cashing places. Like if those things are in the area, it's probably a good area for a laundromat also.
Sure. Those are good tips there. Yeah.
Yeah.
One
One other
go
thing
on.
I was going to say real quick
Yeah, sorry.
is there's also sort of the other side of the spectrum, which is growing right now, which is the drop-off laundry. It's more to the service side, right? Or the pickup and delivery laundry. Now, obviously, that demographic is going to be on the higher income sort of scale there. And the radius can be a little bit larger than that self-serve laundry demographic.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense as well. This first one is there's a horror story here. You went through the trials and tribulations and getting through those 2 years to get to profitability. I have to ask, because I know the audience is going to ask me, what are you making now on that laundromat?
Yeah. So actually I just sold that one. But that one ended up netting around, I think when it finally got stabilized, we were around like $3,500 a month.
Okay.
And so it was never going to net what the broker told me it was going to net. Yeah. I know that now, right? But that one ended up at around the $3,500 a month once it kind of got stabilized there. But it took even longer beyond that 2 years to get to that point, just as it ramped. And again, it was just, I could have done a lot of things to really speed that upswing up. And I didn't do it. I didn't know to do it. And I didn't know how to do it. And I was too scared.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but my approach to avoid the pain that you went through, is it to really like look at, I want to see the books. Like I want to see that income statement, cash flow statement, balance sheet. Would that avoid the problem?
Listen, you would think so, right? Here's the thing about so laundromats, love them or hate them, they're a cash business by and large still. We're slowly here adopting, relatively new technology, which is like card payment systems, stuff that's not really new, but it's new for our industry, right? So more digital payment options are coming to more laundromats, but we're still by and large a cash business. So I sort of half joke, but I'm not really joking. Laundromat owners tend to either be really bad at keeping the books, or maybe they don't have books at all. Or on the other side of the spectrum, they're very good at keeping the books. Like maybe they have more than one book even, you know what I mean? Like, so the books can be helpful, but, sometimes they're just not helpful, and you've got to utilize other methods to verify the income and expenses.
What about going to I assume, I was going to say, go to their H&R Block or whoever their accountant is and ask for the tax returns. And if they're doing their taxes themselves, there we go. We've got jumbled numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they're not, I mean, I've just found that tax returns are not all that helpful, at least in terms of income. They can be helpful in terms of what your expenses are. Because if you're going to lie on your tax, if you're hiding money, or you don't know, right? You're going to try to minimize your income and get every expense in there possible, right? So they tend to be a little more helpful on the expense side than the income side. But my best advice on, if you're trying to verify income is, number one, so there's a whole bunch of free tools that we have at laundromatresource.com. So go download all those free tools and utilize those to help you verify income and expenses. So that's number one. Number two is, if I could have, back when I bought my first laundromat, if I could have had a 15-minute conversation with myself now, I would have saved myself 6 figures of lessons. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I just recommend, listen, if you're any asset class that you're going to go into, real estate, or, any of the real estate asset classes that you can get into, laundromats, any other business, if you're going to do it, just have somebody who's done it before, who understands sort of the industry that you're trying to get into, help you through that, and it's laundromats. Obviously, listen, part of what I want to do is help people get into laundromats if that's what they're trying to do the right way the first time. Because when you're getting returns of 20 to 25% plus, if you get that base hit, if you get it right the first time, sky's the limit for you. You can scale if that's what you want to do, pretty quickly, right? So obviously that's something I want to do, but I don't even care if it's me or anybody else. Like, find somebody who knows, who can help you get into the business the right way, or the investment the right way the first time, because it will just save you so much money. Yes, but pain. Like, right. That's the thing for me. Like, it was so painful for me. And there's a stat that floats around that's like, laundromats are 95% success rate. I don't know where that comes from, but that's the stat that floats around. And I just was like, how am I in the 5% that can't figure this out?
I feel awful.
Yeah. And so the pain and the money and the emotional stress, all that stuff, just save yourself all of that. And if you're going to make an investment with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you need to, fork over a tiny bit more just to make sure you get it right first time.
Yeah. Now this is a good segue to, you have your courses. I want you to talk about that a little bit. And do you offer any kind of coaching, like coaching service, coaching plans?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, there's a ton of free stuff. We have, a podcast, a YouTube channel. We got a blog, Laundromat resource. You can just Google it. It'll show up all over the place. So all that's there. There's a free course that you can check out on how to buy your first laundromat. It'll give you very high level, but it's 3 lessons long. It'll tell you how to find a laundromat, which is easier said than done right now. It'll tell you how to value it. And then the lesson 3 is a kind of a high level overview of due diligence. But if you decide this is an asset class for you, and you really want to dig deep into it, we have a comprehensive course that's based off of, obviously all of my painful, expensive lessons. But also I've interviewed now hundreds of laundromat owners for the podcast, and just, offline, I broker laundromats. So seeing that side of it. So it's coming from a whole bunch of different angles. It's a comprehensive course on how to buy your first laundromat in the next 90 days. And it also comes with all the tools and resources that you need for that. So, and I'll send you a link for that if you want to throw that in the show notes or wherever you put it. So that course is there. I do consult myself, and we have a little consulting team of super experienced owners and industry professionals that also offer consulting. So you've got some options there if you need a little more one-on-one help too.
Sure. Can you break down costs real quick on the course?
The course I believe is $1,500 or right about there for the course. And again, that's coming with, I think it's 40 short lessons, and it's going to walk you through the entire process of valuing the laundromat, and then also give you kind of unlimited access to all the tools you need, which is the online calculator that'll help you with the valuation, both the limited version, when you get the limited info from the seller, but then also the detailed version of that calculator once you dig in and do your due diligence and get more detailed information to get a more precise valuation, and all the other tools, come with that also.
Gotcha. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Before we transition to the rapid fire round, is there any other key takeaway you want to give our audience?
I mean, the only other thing I would say is, like, one thing that, when I do consulting, and I know this comes up all over the place. You probably heard this before too, but I hear things like, oh, I've been thinking about buying a laundromat for years, or, oh, I've been thinking about buying a real estate investment for, 10 years or whatever, and I used to be like, well, why haven't you done it yet? But as I reflect on how hard it was for me to get in, and like all the pain I went through, like, I have some empathy there. So if you're in that spot and you haven't made the leap into whatever you are, thinking about doing, like, just know, like, I understand, I get where you're coming from, and I totally empathize with you. And the risks sort of associated with investing big chunks of money into some of this stuff. However, number one, I would say I'm not dead. I went through it all. It was like pretty much worst case scenario, and I didn't die. So you won't die. Number two is, if you hang with it, even if you find yourself in a difficult situation, you're probably going to come out much better on the other side, not just financially, but I'd say I'm a fundamentally different person than I was when I went in, because I've just grown so much through learning all the lessons that I learned. But number three, you can really, really cap the downside by having somebody who understands the business just walk you through that first, whatever it is. And so, the sort of the main takeaway here is you will never accomplish your goals unless you actually step off the ledge and make the leap, right? And overcoming that first step is probably the hardest part of it all, right?
Sure.
And so all I would say is take the leap, right? Find somebody who's where you want to go, buddy up to them, pay them if you have to, or offer something else of value to them, or whatever you need to do. Find somebody who's been there and then take the leap, cap that downside, and then take the leap and do it. Because that's, there's all kinds of quotes is like everything you want is on the other side of fear, all those motivational things, right? But they're all true, right? You've got to take the step, in order to get where you want to go in life. So take that step.
Awesome. Love the advice. All right. Let's transition to the rapid fire round. This is the part of the episode where we get to find out who Jordan really is.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, now I'm scared.
All right. If you can, try to answer each question in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
Got it. Yep.
All right. What is your favorite podcast?
Oh, my favorite podcast right now is maybe, besides this one, of course, and mine, of course, I've been listening to a lot of The Game with Alex Hormozy. I've been sort of a Hormozy addict lately, just loving the way he approaches things. So I'll say The Game.
I know before we hit record, we talked a lot about content. There it is. Hormozy's big on content, connecting the dots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I know why.
Yeah.
So audience here, real quick. This guy, Jordan, he was telling me about what he does for an episode. He records one episode on his podcast and it's promoted 70 times. He breaks down all the clips. They go out to different channels. Unbelievable, from one piece of content turning into 70. I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor. So anyway, quick plug there. You know what you're doing. You're growing your podcast quickly.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Next question here. What is a recent book you read and would recommend?
You know what? So I'm sort of a book junkie. I got books like all over. You can't see them over here. I got them everywhere. So it's hard to pick one. But if I had to pick one that I've been reading recently that I really love, it would be by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. It's 10X is easier than 2X. And I love that book. One of my big takeaways, it was like a little bit of an aha moment for me, is they're saying, hey, if you're looking to just kind of just level up slowly in life, whatever it is, business or whatever, if you're just kind of trying to level up slowly, incrementally, there's like an infinite number of ways that you can do that. But when you start to think about how do I go from where I'm at to 10X where I'm at, there's really only going to be a few, if not only one way that you can do that. And so it actually gives you a lot of clarity and focus to think bigger and to set bigger goals. That was a big takeaway for me and a big sort of shift in my perspective in what I'm doing. Going back to the content thing, right? I'm like, okay, how do I 10X the content that I'm doing and have developed some systems and tools to help me do that? And those are always evolving. So not 15 seconds, apologies, but 10X is easier than 2X.
They're usually, to be honest with you, I say 15, but they're usually always more. Yeah. I love that. See, another guest recently recommended that same book and it's been sitting in my Amazon shopping cart. All it takes is another guest to be like,
click it.
Just click. Yeah. Time to hit order. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. We got a fun one here. What is your favorite movie?
Oh man. I always go back to Gladiator. I just love Gladiator. It's a hard one to pass up.
I'm
gonna go Gladiator.
I think a handful of people say the same movie. It is a classic, great movie. Yes, indeed. Yeah. All right. A few business questions here. What is the worst advice you ever received?
Probably you don't need to do due diligence on this business.
I'm surprised.
That was pretty bad advice. Seems obvious in hindsight, but lesson learned, I guess.
Hey, lesson learned. All right. Flip the equation. What is the best advice you ever received?
Man, that's a great question. I've received a lot of really great advice. I mean, kind of going back to how we ended before the segment is take the steps, like the action. I guess if I had to boil it down, I can't think of an exact quote for it, but essentially like the action is what takes you where you want to go. I see a lot of people who get, and I do this too, I'm prone to this too, get stuck in that learning loop, listening to your podcast and reading books and consuming, YouTube videos and learning. And learning is great, but really learning doesn't get you anything, right? It's the action, that takes you there. So that was at one point, that was a big shift for me, for sure. Thinking about it that way.
I was just pushing somebody the other day. They were not on the podcast, but they were analyzing and researching and thinking and planning. And I asked them, so what actions have you taken? Well, I'm still researching this. I'm looking at that. I'm like, how long have you been in this research mode? Oh, a year? Come on.
Yeah.
Get off the bench, get in the game.
Yeah. I had a guest on my podcast one time that was like, I give myself 3 months to do research. And then I either cut bait and I decide that's not the route to go, or I go full for it. Because anything you need to get started, you can learn. I think probably even 3 months is long, but anything that you need to, you want to do, you can learn enough to get started in 3 months, easy, for sure.
I love that. Time box it.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Time box it for sure. All right. And last question here is a time machine question. If you could go back in time to give your younger self advice, what age would you visit and what would you say? I think you just answered that question for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, it was so painful that first laundromat, right? It was so painful. I'd definitely go back, to my old self and say, hey, look, don't buy anything until you find somebody who can help you through it. Right. Like it wouldn't even necessarily be specific advice on that deal for myself. It would be find somebody, and don't do anything until you find somebody, to help you through it, who's been there already.
Awesome. All right, Jordan. Well, where can the audience reach you?
So my email is Jordan, JORDAN @laundromatresource.com. So you can check that out there, and laundromatresource.com, or just Google Laundromat Resource, or Yahoo it, if that's still a thing. Laundromat Resource. And then obviously I'll send you a link if you are kind of getting serious about thinking about investing in laundromats. Definitely click that link. That'll take you to the course. Again, it'll give you everything that you need to help you get that first deal and do it the right way the first time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jordan. This is great.
Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Huge honor.